Hey there. Did you know that most people don't fail at buying rental properties because of the market? They fail mostly because they're focusing on the wrong thing. They get the wrong thing from the start. So, in this video, I'm going to show you what most people get wrong and how to avoid making those same mistakes. So, let's go. When we talk about buying investment properties, a lot of times we talk about here's what you should do, here's the numbers that you looked at. In my last video that I did about the three things that you should always use, the three numbers, we talked about how to look at the income and expenses and the appreciation and all that kind of thing. But those aren't always the things. Most of the time, people pay attention to the numbers. It's the other things that they do that kind of mess them up when they're buying an investment property. So in this video, we're going to talk about those. So my name is Nancy Wallace Laabs, and I've been investing in single-family homes now for going on 20 years. I used to do property management on single-family homes, and so I feel that my experience that I've talked about over the last few years about, what kind of properties to look for, how to manage tenants and that kind of thing really benefit people who are looking to transition from their job to real estate investing. I've been on the speaking circuit. I'm a bestseller. And not that that's just to give you an idea of who I am. And I am so passionate about real estate investing because it's been a really good wealth vehicle for myself and my family. So if you're ready to have a conversation about real estate investing, you can hit me up at 469-430-9885. And if you want to take a step today, you can actually download how to find the deals. We have a free guide. You'll find the link in the description. So, the real problem is not the real estate market, whether it's up, whether it's down, whether it's a buyer's market or seller's market. It's all up here. It's about the mindset. I have talked to so many people over the years that have a genuine desire to invest in real estate, and they just don't. They have all the resources. They have even been some of my coaching students, and they just cannot get over the fear. They have so much fear about making a mistake, about losing their money. And, sometimes that's just hard to get over because maybe something in our childhood is holding us back about how we think about money. So there's being paralyzed, there's avoidance, and always second guessing yourself. Because what I have found is when people don't feel confident or they don't have people around them that support what they want to do, they find it very difficult to move forward. And a lot of times they are just so stuck. So the other thing that I find is that people just aren't clear on what to do, where to look, how to do it, right? You can watch all kinds of videos, like this video is going to be talking about this, but, and I have other videos about, the numbers and, where to get the money and all that kind of stuff. But, putting it all together and making all that make sense for you is where people struggle, where the clarity, you might just not be clear and have your own strategy, right? So I like to work with people who they just need to get focused, right? And sometimes when we hear about all these different strategies and things like that, it gets overwhelming and we don't know where to start. So we just don't. And so my goal for you is to say, hey, you just need to get clear on what your goal is and why you would want to even do this. And then you want to make some forward progress. And that's why I have a lot of freebies that I give away, but this guide that I have is really a good start. If you're one of those people and you're like, oh, I don't have the time, I don't have this, I don't have that, just download it and I can show you in just a few minutes how you can find properties, and that kind of thing. And which sometimes it's so simple that people don't even realize how easy it is to find the deal. So what are we going to be talking about today? Well, number one, some of the mistakes people make all the time is they just want to wait for the perfect property. And you know what? There's just no such thing. I've been doing this for, a couple decades now. And sometimes you have to make the deal work, right? Because sellers always want more for their house, no matter what. Sellers always think their house is worth more. So you have to come with the knowledge and the dedication and the skills, negotiate, and to get that property at a price that makes sense for you. So waiting for the perfect property just doesn't happen because waiting means that you're not being active. You're not actually going out there and finding the property. And then you're focusing only on one purchase price. Now, we're not going to get into all the different ways that you can purchase properties, but, the purchase price is something that you have to learn. What does that mean? You might be missing the full financial picture. So let's say you're looking at a property and that property is worth $300,000 and the seller is just dead set on getting $220,000, but you know that you shouldn't be paying more than $198 for the property. So how are you going to fill that gap? from what they want to, you want. Well, sometimes you just can't. Right. But there may be some other things that you're missing because maybe they have an extra lot that goes with the property. Right. Maybe they have a house full of furniture that they're willing to, and you want it and it's valuable. So there could be other things. So don't just, that purchase price is just one number and you're trying to do it alone. And, if you've been doing this for a while, then you know what I'm saying. I can't think of one investor who just didn't have someone, whether it was a YouTube person, an avatar, it was somebody walking beside them because we all grow together, right? We all learn on this journey of real estate investing because it can be different for each one of us. Trying to do it all by yourself with no guidance, no feedback, no accountability, is going to keep you stuck in that first. That's where people in fear, they're fearful, they're fearful, they lack confidence because if they were just to work with somebody to guide them, to get a mentor. I started with a mentor. I would say 99% of the people that I know that are successful real estate investors all started with the same thing. They had someone that they worked with, right? And then overestimating risk. One of the videos I did is that when we're talking about, risk, that sometimes we underestimate the risk, but more times than not, we overestimate the risk. We can't get out of our own way. And this all goes back to mindset. These are the 6 most common mistakes that I see people just getting stuck on, right? And that you need everything figured out first. So if you're a perfectionist, you could probably relate to this, right? Because you just have to have everything lined up. But you know what? Sometimes it's a learning journey. One of the things that one of my mentors taught me a long time ago was that real estate investing is like building a house. You have to start with the first brick. And then you learn that, and then you put on another brick, and then you make sure that that's stable, and then you put on another brick, and so on and so forth. And over time, you will learn all you need to know about real estate investing. And there's some things about real estate investing in different areas that, I'm never going to learn about because I don't really want to learn about it. I don't have an interest in it. And so I stick to single family investing. Do I know a little bit about multifamily? Yes, I do. Do I know a little bit about land investing? Yes, I do. Do I know about, passive income and lending? Yes, I do. But my focus and my strategy and my clarity is all around single family homes. And then we just treat it like a side idea. There's no plan, there's no criteria, there's no direction. And again, that's why we created our free guide that you can download because it actually helps you map out how to find rental properties. So let's just talk about these 6 things that hold people up. So waiting for that perfect property. And here's the biggest mistake. You just keep searching and searching. One of the people I worked with, they came to me and they said, hey, I found this property. Can you help me analyze it? And it was a smoking deal. It was a smoking deal. We went through all the numbers and he just didn't pull the trigger on it. And then 6 months went by and we did a look back to see what happened with that property. And sure enough, somebody had snatched it up and they had refinanced it and they did a couple of improvements. It was actually a duplex was a single family home that they made into a duplex and they doubled the value on the property. So instead of being $300,000 worth, it was $600,000 worth of value. And so he was just kicking himself all over the place. So he was in analysis paralysis, right? And I can't make you buy the property. All I can do is say, this is a good deal and, you should move forward on it. Every month you wait and the cost to buy property. So where I was at 20 years ago, the single family homes that I was interested in were about $120,000. Those single family homes in the same areas, same exact property are now being sold for $250,000, $300,000. So the longer you wait, the more it costs you to get in. So that's why you want to start taking action now. So what you want to start doing is focus on good enough, right? A deal that meets your core criteria. So in the last video, I talked about the formula, cash flow, appreciation, equity that you're getting in the property. And that's the main formula. So if you have a property that leads you in that direction, that's what you need to focus on. When done is infinitely better than perfect, it comes to building wealth because it's very hard in real estate investing to make huge mistakes unless you're just blatantly going out there and not paying attention to any of the numbers. So the hard truth of the matter is that perfection is not going to happen. It's a moving target and you will never catch it. The perfect property will just pass you by. So the time in the market beats timing the market. Okay, that's that's good to know, right? So the cost of waiting. Act now, you're building equity year one, right? The longer you wait, you're missing out on that equity. So not to beat a dead horse here, but really the gist of real estate investing is buying it right, holding it, having a tenant pay down your rent, the principal pay down, and it grows in value over time, over the years. So the other mistake I see people making is overestimating risk and underestimating stability. Single family homes, time and time again, you can look up all kinds of statistics, are shown and known to be a stable form of investing, right? Now, has there been peaks in the years? Yes, there definitely has. If you were around in 2008, or you'll hear about market turns and market shifts. But when you become a real estate investor and you learn the fundamentals of buying the property right, of paying attention to the numbers, then the mistakes, you actually are minimizing your risk. So, the mistake that I see people is that they're just paralyzed with the fear of bad tenants. So let me just tell you something about bad tenants. They make good stories and they are out there, no lie. But in my 10 years of property management, probably had, I would say maybe 10 to 15% of all the rentals that we did, which was well over 500. Very few times do you have, I guess what I'm trying to say is like, bad tenants do happen. They just don't happen as often as you hear about. It's because it's much easier to talk about all the bad stories instead of the good stories about those tenants that always pay on time, stay, and that kind of thing. So believing that, that one problem will derail your opportunity to invest in real estate, hire a property manager if you don't want to deal with tenants, right? So over consuming negative horror stories, there's Facebook groups dedicated to bad tenants, or, Airbnb. There's, a Facebook group called Airbnb Vent, Rant, and Rave. And yeah, if you just watch that, first of all, I did get on that Facebook group. I was like, dang, these people have a lot of negative guests and bad guests and things like that. But I learned so much about how I should manage my own Airbnb property. So what you should do instead is building cash reserves and operational systems from day one, right? So you're buying the property, understanding the real numbers, the formula, those three numbers that, I keep harping about: the monthly income, monthly cash flow, knowing your income, what kind of income can this property generate? What kind of expenses will it incur to be stable, right? So stability and clarity is what I really want you to take away. So you have to have clarity on the kinds of things that you want to invest in, whether it's going to be a 2-bedroom, 1-bath condo or 3-bedroom, 2-bath house. So you have to have clarity first on your direction. And then the stability, once you know what numbers to look at, will help you with that mindset so that you're not overcome by fear. So just remember, millions of landlords successfully own and operate rental properties. I am, living proof right here, and, you can do it too. So there are 3 pillars of what I like to call risk management. So if you've been taking some of those management courses, they talk about risk management or whatnot. So this is how you build stability and help yourself feel better and feel confident about investing in real estate, because really that's what we're talking about, right? In this video is about getting in the right mindset so that you can take action, that you can move forward and not be stuck with your fear or unknown or what ifs, right? So number 1, try to set aside 3 to 6 months of operating expenses. Now, this is not down payment, right? So remember I talked about in another video about having cash reserves and where does that money come from? Because the bottom line is things will happen, right? And, how are you going to cover those expenses? And it could be, a vacancy for a couple months, or, you have to turn on utilities, or you have to, maybe it's a big repair, and maybe it's a small repair. Sometimes when you buy a rental property that says, let's say it has a stove in it, and the stove is, need to be replaced or need to be repaired, how are you going to cover that? And then operational systems. Now, this could be, as easy as, you don't have to have this whole CRM, spend a ton of money on, computer software and things like that. I am not a computer person. I use a lot of Excel spreadsheets, but operational systems is just simply saying, okay, how are you going to screen your tenants? And there's all kinds of ways to screen tenants. And I have some videos out there about property management and how to get the right tenant and things like that. You want to put everything in writing, have a strong lease agreement. So in Texas, our lease agreement is actually longer than, it has more pages than a contract to buy a house, right? So the last time I looked, I think it was like 16 or 17 pages, and that's if you don't have a pet. And if you have a pet, there's a pet agreement. And if you have a pool, there's a swimming pool addendum and all that kind of thing. So systems eliminate chaos and protect your investment long term. So basically what we're saying here is if you're working a full-time job, managing 1, 2, even up to 5 properties can be super easy for you by just having a system. And that system could be an Excel spreadsheet. I used to track the tenants, like the rent. And I mean, we did have like QuickBooks and things like that. But for me, simple, I had a spreadsheet with all of the tenants' names in it, the property address, and I had it, January, February, March for each month. And then I simply would go and highlight as the rents came in. I would just go and highlight their names, yellow that they paid, red that, is past the 3-day or whatever it was. And at a glance, I could see the action I needed to take. Now I'm talking about, doing multiple tenants here, but if you only have 1 or 2 and you put in a system with a solid lease agreement, it lowers your risk of having a bad tenant. The tenant screening is number 1, right? You're going to do good tenant screening. And then number 3 is just, are you paying attention to the real numbers? Vacancy rates, repair cost. We talked about monthly cash flow, not emotional worst case scenarios, but the actual what is happening in a particular neighborhood with rentals. So if you are purchasing a property in a neighborhood with a lot of rentals, then a couple things. One, let's say that the market rent is $1,600, but there's 10 rentals on one street. So you know what? If 3 of them have a vacancy and they're pretty much all like each other, in order for you to reduce vacancy, you might have to lower your rent to $1,550. So I always tell people, like, make sure, wherever you're buying a rental property, do look at the area and how many rentals are in there. So that's just an example of how you can manage your risk. Now, focusing only on one purchase price. This is another thing where people get hung up on. So the mistake is just obsessing over getting a deal on the purchase price alone, right? So you don't want to do that. You want to be open to what else is happening with that property. So you want to look at the ongoing performance of a particular property. And this is really important. Like when people get into short-term rentals, they really want to look at this. They want to look at the performa of what the actual income is, because short-term rentals can perform way higher than a long-term rental. And you want to celebrate a low purchase price on a property that loses money, so no, you don't want to do that. That's the mistake, where just because you got a property at a super duper discount, but it can't, doesn't generate any income, that's not a good deal, right? So what you want to look at is the full picture. Remember, we talked about this, the cash flow, appreciation, and the principal pay down. You may get into a slightly higher purchase price and it can still be a really great deal. The total return matters far more than, let's say that you're looking at a property and it looks like on paper it's getting $500 a month cash flow, but in reality, it's in an area that's declining. There's tons and tons of rental properties. So over year, the value of the property is going to decrease. And with that will also go with that monthly cash flow. So 3 ways rental properties actually do build wealth. And this is why I have just stuck with them over all the years. So number 1 is that cash flow that we've just talked about, right? The monthly rent minus the expenses. And then you've got appreciation. I love appreciation. Okay. I love appreciation because, you can buy a property and literally can plan your retirement if you buy it right. So when I say this, like if you hold a property for 10 or 15 years, or maybe, I've known people that they purchase a property for their child, and then when the child, gets 18, 19, 20 years old, they're able to sell that property to send them to college or, I don't know, gift the house to them or whatever, but there's so much value now in that property over the last 20 years. And then you've got your principal pay down, which is awesome. I've owned rental properties for years and the tenant has literally paid off my mortgage. And that's the beauty of owning a rental property, is that somebody else is paying the bills for you. So what I want you to walk away with here is that a property with slightly lower cash flow, but strong appreciation and a great location is a great deal. So that's what you need to focus on, not just that one number. So what do investors actually look at? Well, they look at a lot of different things, right? For me, I like to look at location. It's not going to be on here, but I like to look at location. I like to look at crime statistics because since I am focused on single family homes and most of the time I'm renting to families, everybody wants a safe place to lay their head down at night, right? To go to sleep. So I do look at purchase price. I look at how much rent is coming in and I want to look at my monthly cash flow and then the annual appreciation. And you can Google, let's say you didn't have access to somebody like me, you can literally Google all this information about almost any property that you can find. There's so much information out there that, will help you with these numbers. So the smart deal, so the purchase price, cheap deal, smart deal. So the takeaway, the cheaper deal actually underperforms. So this kind of giving you that comparison. So sometimes the purchase price is not the best price, is not the best indicator if this is a good deal or not. So, the rentability, I love areas where there's a high demand, good school district, low crime statistics. Those are all good things. And you don't see those on this sheet, do you? So I'm giving you some tips. But yes, the numbers are what dictate whether it's a good deal or not. But then for me personally, I know that if I want to look for a long-term rental or even a short-term rental, I have a story for you about a short-term rental. So a friend of mine bought a really nice older property in beautiful home, beautiful home. I mean, the pictures were absolutely fabulous. But the thing is, the property was located right next to a dump. And it was a messy dump and it was on a bad street, in terms of like there was, it was very industrial. So it was an Airbnb. So guess what happened? Yes, right away he got a lot of bookings and that kind of thing. But what do you think happened when people started leaving reviews about the area? That's right. Yeah, it's not a good Airbnb. And so now he's not making any money. So the numbers all seem to make sense. It had never been an Airbnb before, but doing your due diligence, sometimes I just go think about how you would feel if you went on vacation with your family and you were in kind of a bad area, right? How would you feel about that? Would you rent it? So thinking you need to figure everything out. I think this is the biggest thing that gets in a lot of our ways, not just, about real estate investing, but just about life in general, right? We have to, especially women, we feel like, we have to get everything figured out and it has to be organized and has to be perfect. But, waiting until you understand every single facet about real estate investing, you'll never buy something. I'm still learning things 20 years down the road, right? Because it's not just about buying. It's about, the money. It's about management. It's about so many things. How do you scale? And if I had to wait until I knew everything, I would have never bought a property. So when I bought my first rental property, I just knew a couple things. One, I was really, really nervous and scared. I had the butterflies. I tell the story all the time. My mentor was standing right there and, her exact words to me were, if you don't buy this property, I will, because it was such a good deal. And it was a great rental. And I held that property for 11 years and had the same tenant, and that tenant just paid down. I'd refinance the house, paid down, it was great. But one of the things was it was location. I knew it was a good area. So, waiting until I understand every facet. And then what I did is I would ask my mentor, well, what about this? What about that? And that's how you learn. Did I make some mistakes along the way? Yes, I did. But it didn't stop me because I always learned, right? And then trying to eliminate all the uncertainty, it's just not going to happen because things pop up. The market changes, right? Real estate investing can be fluid and you confuse yourself when you continually keep on researching, when you look for one more YouTube video, when you look for one more person, when you go, I met a lady and she thought she might come on to my coaching program, but she had gone to 3 different 3-day events, right? And she still couldn't pull the trigger. So I'm not saying she needed to hire me as a coach, but she just needed to take some action. And she just kept going to meetings expecting real estate investing to find her. And it just doesn't work that way. You have to take action. So what to do instead? So learn what is the next step? What do you need to do? So if you have fear right now, you're like, oh my gosh, my heart's palpitating. I don't know what to do. Then number 1, just download our guide. Just read through that. Okay. Number 2, you could just book a call with me. Okay. We could just have a clarity conversation, right? No obligation. Just get clear on what you want to do. And maybe you need to take a few steps before you even start investing in real estate. You'll never feel 100% ready, even after all these years. I just did a deal a couple weeks ago and I was still second guessing myself about, should I keep it? Should I not keep it? Because it didn't really fall right into my buy criteria. I'm going to talk about that in another video, but, I even still kind of have my self-doubts. And so I actually go and I talk to my mentor and, in my group and find out, okay, well, what do you think, and kind of bounce ideas off. So the reality is every experienced investor will tell you the same thing. They learn more from their first deal than from all the books and podcasts combined. And that's just how it goes. As you do, you will learn. So clarity comes from doing, not waiting. And we talked earlier about, what waiting costs you and all the opportunity that you are missing out on, that you are keeping yourself from. I mean, if you could, transition from your full-time job, or if you could build the kind of legacy wealth that you really, you hear people talking about, or if you could just have, a few extra bucks a month, would that change? Would that be enough to make you take action, right? So you don't need to see the whole staircase. You just need to take that first step. And it's one foot after another, right? I'm a big fan of Naked and Afraid. And at the end, when they're going through extraction, what do they say? Just one foot in the other one. They don't know where the road is. They just know they got to keep going. They're tired or whatnot. So you have to learn the basics. You have to learn how to analyze deals. You have to learn how to make offers and talk to sellers. And then you close and manage it. So you have 3 numbers that you're going to be working with, which we talked about in the other video, and 4 steps. So learn the basics. You don't have to figure everything out, right? You learn how to analyze deals just from those 3 numbers that we talked about. You make an offer, which if you download our guide, you'll learn how to kind of talk to sellers. We have some seller scripts in there. And then closing and managing. And are you going to know from learning the best basics to how to manage tenants? Probably not, but that's okay, because that's why you have resources like myself that can help you along that journey. So trying to do it alone, I guess this is what I'm trying to say to you. You don't have to do it all by yourself. Now, maybe you just want to. Maybe you're just a person that, wants to figure it all out. And, some people are like that and they can figure it out. Most people struggle if they have to do it all by themselves. They need someone to say, yes, you're on the right path. Yes, you're taking that first step. Yes, yes, yes. Or sometimes you already have been doing it alone and you don't even know what is happening. Why, you're not getting your deals. You don't know why. You don't know what it is that you don't know. So moving forward with zero guidance, feedback, or even a second set of eyes, it can be, I'm just going to say, it can be dangerous. You know why? Because it's very risky to be buying real estate investing. It's not like this is a $5 investment. You're talking about tens of thousands of dollars that you're putting at risk. And, one rental property, I worked with a couple. I met them at a networking group, and bless their heart, they had spent so much money on different coaching programs and doing this and that. And I just said, stop. Just come to my house. Let's have a conversation and let's talk about what your goals are. And, they spent more on trying to figure it out than they did actually finding a property. So relying on random advice from social media, there have been a lot of gurus and a lot of people that put stuff out on social media. I put stuff out on social media. I try to keep it real. You don't see me flashing around Lamborghinis or anything like that because I don't own a Lamborghini. Maybe someday it's too low to the ground for me. And, just who do you know that you can trust? Because that's really what it's about, right? Who has been doing this and can show you the way? And not knowing what you don't know. And I think that's the biggest thing. People keep searching on YouTube or read this book or read that. And they just don't know what they don't know. They don't know where to find the deal. They don't know where to find the money. They don't even know what questions to ask. So what should you do? Well, you should surround yourself with people who have actually done it, right? Get support early. Like when you're starting out, yes, watch YouTube videos. I like to watch YouTube videos too to find out, oh, okay, well, is this a different strategy? And, I'll sign up for things. I was like, oh, well, I already knew how to do that. So, just be careful about how you're finding your information. And then, you know what? Sometimes just having a good mentor and advisor is the best use of money that you will ever get, because once you've learned the basics and learn what to do, then you can rinse and repeat and continue to build on that. So who you learn from who you learn from determines how fast you are going to grow. So I recently made a switch over to eXp Realty. So I've been an independent broker for a really long time. And the reason I did it was because I was offered the opportunity that, quite frankly, I couldn't pass down. There was coaching and training from people that I would have had to pay tens of thousands of dollars with. And just in my first few weeks, it's already been a great move. Let's just put it that way. So number one, I feel that I've joined a seasoned mentors. They're people that have been doing what I've been doing, but they're doing it in a lot larger volume and scale. So I'm using them as mentors, just like I would hope you would want to use me as a mentor. They've navigated where I want to go. And I'm so happy that they're sharing their journey with me. I'm also part of a very supportive investor community that I also bring people into that I work with, because again, none of us do it alone, even myself. I've been doing it for a long time and I still need, that feedback feedback and accountability, and knowledgeable real estate professional. So you have to have somebody that can guide you with where do you find all of this information. I like to use heat maps so I know exactly where the price point that I'm looking for properties. I can just zero in right there and I can go there, and I'm not wasting time in areas that A, I'm not going to invest in, and B, I'm not going to spend marketing dollars to find off market deals in areas that I have no intention of investing in. So, that helps me grow faster and faster, which in turn, then I'm offering that to you as well. So, again, I don't do it alone. I don't want you to do it alone. And I don't treat it as a side idea instead of a strategy. So it's not saying that you can't be a real estate investor on the side because, one of the things that we work with is women who work full-time jobs, but they are transitioning into real estate investing. They don't want to quit their day job or, for whatever reasons they can't right now. So you still have to have a plan. You don't want to just treat it as this, oh, I'll get to it when I get to it. So you still have to have a plan, your criteria, some direction. That clarity is what, you want. When you don't have that, that's when you just stay stuck, right? And go back to the beginning. We were talking about mindset. And a lot of times to get over fear, we have to have direction and clarity, right? So what you really want to focus in on is determine is single family investing for you. If it is, you're in the right place, right? If you're in multifamily, you need to go somewhere else because, I just know a little bit about that. And I don't even, I don't coach people on family investing. There's too many facets to it. And you want to know exactly what you're looking for. You have to have a plan. I mean, if you have a plan, you can literally in our guide that I keep talking about that you can download, we just talk about, you just need a few minutes a week, really. I mean, if you can spend more time, great, but you don't have to have, a full 40 hours a week to do real estate investing. You just need a little bit of time. Being intentional is everything. How you're going to learn it, who you're going to work with, and, devoting some time so that you can take action, being intentional in your action. Again, you're not going to have everything figured out, but you're going to have intention because this is something that you want to do and you want to have intention in getting clarity, intention on direction, and intention on action. So defining your investment criteria before you look at any properties where and this is something that we help with, your target market, where are you going to invest in? If you're watching this, I have people in Florida that follow me. So maybe you're in Orlando or Miami, or maybe you're in the Dallas area. Maybe you're in Oklahoma. What area are you going to focus on? And there's ways that we can help you decide that. So in the area that I live in, particular city that I live in is Frisco, Texas. So I don't invest in Frisco because it's just the housing prices are way high, but there's pockets of Frisco that depending on if I wanted to, I could, but I look at other areas of investing. And then the property type for me, single family all day long, but you might not want to do single family. Now, when I say single family, what I'm talking about is duplexes. I do go up to as much as an eightplex. Okay. So eightplexes, meaning like a small apartment complex, not multifamily, like hundreds and hundreds, condos, townhomes. Sometimes we come across land and we'll figure out because of our investing network, we try to figure out what we can do with that. And then what's your cash flow target? What minimum monthly cash flow does that property have to get? And then what's your budget and financing? Because I always say you need some money in real estate investing, to pay for inspections and things like that. And then let's talk about an exit strategy because I've been talking about, buy and hold, but at some point you might want to let go of those properties. And so what does that look like? Or the other thing that happens is I buy a property and I always try to have two exit strategies, meaning maybe it's going to be a short-term rental for a while. Maybe I'm going to turn it into a mid-term rental or maybe a long-term rental. So there's different ways that you can pivot with each of the strategies that we teach. So what really matters, right, to you? Right? Just strip away everything that I've been talking about, all the things, and what really is it that matters? So cash flow, building long-term rent, stable, rentable market, and it gets you in the game. Those are the things that you personally need to figure out. And that's something that I can help you with. But I know people that want to get in the game and they just rush in and they don't look at cash flow, or they'll buy in a location that is oversaturated with short-term rentals or long-term rentals. They don't know they don't know what they don't know, right? And then building long-term wealth through the equity. And the equity is one of the first things that you're going to look at is Are you buying that property at a discount? Remember, we talked about on sale. How much equity do you have in the property? And as the principal pay down goes down and the asset grows because of appreciation, those are the things that we're talking about. Now, the 6 mistakes and the mind shift. So we talked about the 6 mistakes, right? So what do you need to do to get over that, right? To shift your way of thinking, if you will, to reprogram yourselves. If you're waiting on perfection, you just need to act on good enough, right? Act on good enough. Overestimating risks. Build systems and reserves. We talked about, tenant screening and waiting for perfection has to do with, let's know our 3 numbers. And then fixating on that purchase price when we're overlooking how much equity we're getting on the property or the appreciating area, and that we need all the answers first. I think this is really one that just gets people, because I'll talk to people and they'll go, well, I just really need to know how to figure all this out. No, you don't. You learn from people who have already been there, right? So when we learn to drive a car, we don't just get in the car and go because we've watched or we've been a passenger for years and years and years, right? We learn, how to put it in, especially if you're doing a stick, right? You just are not going to jump in and just go right away. So you learn one step at a time, and trying to do it all by yourself is just going to be so much harder for you. And, you're going to feel frustrated and you're going to feel anxiety and you're going to feel like, oh my gosh, this is a huge risk. I'm just doing it. I'm risking everything all by myself, when you could have a supportive community helping you and you have no clear strategy. You have no direction, so this is something that you also need to do, is just define your criteria. So I can guarantee if you make the mind shift to correct the mistakes, the 6 biggest mistakes that stop people, you will feel so confident and proud of yourself for taking those steps and taking action to start investing in real estate so that you can transition into real estate investing. And whether that's quitting your 9 to 5, whether that's just building additional income, it's building something for you and your family. But once you take hold of those mind shifts in I call it stinking thinking. And if some of you have been around, you know where that comes from. But that's what I call it. We talk ourselves out of these things because of our mistakes, our beliefs that we have, that we can't do it because we are waiting for something that's not going to happen. So again, you don't have to figure this out alone. You have me. You have my daughter, Kelsey. And if you're sitting there thinking, you know what, I don't want to get this wrong, I want to be able to do it right, then book an investment strategy call with us. We would love to talk with you. You can reach us at the 469-430-9885. But you can also download, if you just want to get going, download that Find Deals You're Already Missing. It's got a lot of stuff in it, and it'll help you at least get clarity on, okay, this is what I want to do. No, I don't want to do that. And what's been happening is people have been downloading it and then they've been booking a call. So we love to hear from you. If you have not watched the video on did you find a good deal or not, then go to the video. I go over the 3 numbers in detail. Combining your mind shift with knowing the numbers, you're going to be golden. And I'll see you soon.